Welcome everyone to Unsheathed Sword Reviews. I'm Vic.
And I'm John.
And today we're bringing you a review of the Royal Armouries - Windlass - Matt Easton 14th century Holy Roman Empire longsword. Holy crap, that is a long title.
That is a long title for a longsword. So talking about this sword, you're a lot more familiar with European swords than I am. So I know oakshot typology thing. What is the oakshot typology of this and kind of what was it designed to do?
All right, so this sword and this entire line of swords is actually super interesting. Before I get into that, if you don't know what these swords are, it's a collaborative effort between the Royal Armouries, Windlass Steelcrafts, and Matt Easton to bring a line of one-for-one replicas of select swords that are in the Royal Armouries display. This specific sword is a longsword from the 14th century, and it is an oakshot type 15A longsword. So that specific sword is a very, very, very specialized thrusting sword. Mm-hmm. It's not a very good cutter. This is at a point in time in the high medieval period when plate armor was really kind of at its apex. So what you needed is a sword that sacrificed a lot of just kind of broad cutting potential in order to be very, very thrust-centric.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like for getting it in between plates of armor.
Exactly,
like
for that.
Half swording and all that kind of
stuff.
stuff.
And that is exactly what this type of sword is really good at. It excels at that. These swords were often very long, very slender profiles. They were usually a flattened diamond cross section. Some of them were hollow ground. Some of them had reinforced tips, I believe. But all of them were really, really good at thrusting into that plate armor. This is a really, really nice example of that. Real quick, though, I need to mention about this specific sword. You might see in some of the pictures and in some of the videos that it is pretty scuffed up along the blade. So these swords come almost sharp, like mostly sharp, but I believe because of where they're being shipped from, they can't have an edge.
There's some legal stuff about it, yeah.
So it has a good edge geometry, and all of them are very accurate to what their specific sword type are in this line. But it needs to be kind of fine-tuned toward the end on your own.
And so we've talked before about our Svardelf friend who sharpens things for us. And as it turns out, even Svardelfs eventually lose their eyesight. And that seems to be what's happened here because he did not do... I mean, he put a decent edge on it. Mm-hmm. He did a good job keeping the edge geometry. Didn't put a huge secondary bevel on it or anything. But he also, it was like he was just like... on the wheel because you can see it's just very scuffed up. I'm not sure if it's showing on the video or not.
But you'll see in the close-up shots more than likely. And so other swords I've taken of them, he's scuffed here and there, but this is the entire length of the blade. So know that it does not look like this from the factory. It was very pretty from the factory.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And another thing I like about this, and it's you can see it in your unboxing that you did of this, is just the way it's presented when you get it. I think it's probably the best presented sword that you get when you buy it ever. So I really, really like the job they did packaging it and presenting it and having the sheath and all that. It looks really great. You get a certificate with it. It's really pretty cool.
It really does a good job of making this feel special.
It does. It really does. Yep.
Yeah. So if you're interested in watching that, I'll put a link to my unboxing in the description below.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a very interesting sword type and a very specific sword type. And it's also one that kind of doesn't lend itself to being a good backyard cutter for soft targets.
Although, I mean, while it's not designed to do that, you'll see in our footage that it actually cuts better than I expected it to for sure. And I mean, how much does it weigh? It is listed at 4 pounds 2 ounces. But when Vic weighed his specific example of it, it's 3 pounds 14 ounces. And now was that after you sharpened it? After you had it sharpened?
Yeah, but I weighed it before the sharpening and it was still 3 pounds 14 ounces. Just higher, almost to 3 pounds 15 ounces. Okay. And now it's closer to 3 pounds and just 14.
Okay. And so you can kind of expect that, I think, with an initial run. The specs may be a little bit more off than they will be later on. So I wouldn't sweat about that too much, but it is a little bit different than what the factory specs are. But regardless of that, it still cuts a lot better than you would expect a 4-pound sword to cut. Because it is essentially a 4-pound sword, and it's pretty amazing. But the fit and finish of this, I think, is really, really good. It's simple. It's a very simple fit and finish. It's not ornate. It's not bougie like Victor would necessarily like. But it's very well presented, I think. I think they do a really good job of it. I mean, the pommel is, first of all, gigantic. Literally, it's like a mace on the end of your pommel, basically. So the murder stroke, definitely a thing with this sword for sure. But it's smooth. It's well polished. There aren't any scuff marks. The peen is really good. It's just a really, really good looking fit and finish, I think. And I love the lines of the blade. I love the guard. I love that sort of Black Prince-ish kind of look it has because it's kind of the sister sword of the Black Prince. So I just really like the way this sword looks. I was very impressed with it. What did you think, Nick?
I pretty much echo everything that you said. So other manufacturers make Type 15 swords, but like we talked about before, this is supposed to be a 1-for-1 replica of a specific sword. And that specific sword is even like meatier and thicker than, like the ring ek or whatever from Albion.
Yeah.
But the question, and I addressed this in my unboxing, is whether or not Windlass Steelcrafts can basically up their fit and finish game, because they're known for making budget level swords. Not bad by any means, but budget.
Sure.
This at MSRP $674 is very firmly in the upper mid range.
Yeah,
right.
Like pretty much a high end sword.
Yeah,
spitting distance anyway.
And so with that, and part of all the meticulous specs and measurements that Matt Easton took, and talking with the Royal Armouries about.
Also, let's just talk for a second about the fact that Matt Easton gets to go into the Royal Armoury right. and handle these swords. That does not seem fair to me.
I'm not jealous. You're jealous.
Not exactly.
But so part of it, like. I think they nailed the fit and finish for what would be an upper mid-range sword. Again, like you said, it's not heavily ornate or anything, but that's by design because it is a
one-for-one replica.
Yeah,
it looks like the sword it's supposed to be.
So. Well, part of what makes this a sword that's justifies its price point is like the dimension in the pommel. You know what I mean? Like the way it slopes down ever so gracefully. Even the peen block comes up and swells toward the tip.
Yep.
The shape of the grip is really well done. So I'm a sucker for cord wrapped leather with a riser or two.
And it's got 3.
And so this is like perfection for me. The seam, you could see it if you're looking for it, but like it's really straight. It's really well done. I didn't feel it at all. Did you really feel it?
I didn't feel it in my hand at all. And I really do like the handle on this sword too. And we can talk about that more in handling. But it's a solid handle. It's probably one of the larger longsword handles I've held. But I feel like with the amount of blade presence that this thing has, you want that much to grab onto to kind of control it better. So you'll notice behind us, Vic has a fairly impressive sword wall. This can't hang on the sword wall because the freaking pommel is too big. Because it's like a mace head on the bottom of the sword. So it's great for number one for the murder strike, and also for just counterbalancing this ridiculously beefy blade. And you'll see in our cutting, we actually pull off some one-handed cuts with a 4-pound sword. It's ridiculous.
And so one thing to build off your point there is, so this thing is a beast. It is a monster of a sword, but it doesn't feel like dead weight because it has an insane amount of distal taper. It's 11 millimeters at the base, all the way to 6 millimeters at the tip. So for those, sword people among you might know that like 6 millimeters at the base, that's a lot for like most good high-end production swords.
Absolutely. Especially more purpose-built cutting swords.
Right. And so like the pommel is that big, like you said, for the counterbalance. So like all of a sudden when you pick it up, it has a presence. It feels heavy.
Exactly. But it doesn't feel unwieldy.
It feels lively in its own way, which is really weird, right?
It's definitely very strange. It makes me think of like if you follow like the non-canon lightsaber thing about Star Wars, and they talk about how the gyroscopic force is enough to rip a normal person's arm off. I feel like this is like that. Like if you got it moving around, it's just got so much presence to it. It like it's gonna take a truck to stop it.
So finishing up with the fit and finish real quick before we move on to how we thought it performed. I was very, very happy with it. That said, though, if you guys follow the YouTubes, there's another sword reviewer out there. His name is Kane Shen. Apologies if I'm completely butchering that. He posted a review of the Wakefield Hanger and the Type 17 15th century longsword. Both swords are really, really cool.
From the same line, right?
Yes, from this same line. So if you're interested in seeing, there's not a whole lot of content out of this yet, aside from Matt Easton's videos, which I'll also link to. But if you want to see more swords from this line, check out his review, which will be linked in the description below. And check out his channel in general. He goes really in depth in terms of like handling, historical components. Dude knows how to use a sword. His cutting footage is very impressive. He has a great channel. Check it out. But so the two swords that he had slight issues in terms of the grips and the seam and the risers and parts of the guard creating hot spots. I didn't notice any of that with this. Noted though that this is a totally different model than the ones he has, right?
For sure. And also, he probably did a lot more extensive cutting than we did. We just did, 5 whacks each with some water bottles in the backyard. So if I was playing with it for an hour, it might be a different story. But I don't necessarily think so because it felt pretty good in my hand.
That said, first run of a new line, there's probably going to be issues.
Yep.
This specific sword, I'm very happy with it.
I can't think of one thing I would point at and be like, they need to fix this. I mean, it just looks good overall.
One thing.
Well, he figures he would have something.
Yeah. The gap in the crossguard, which it's not overly big. It's fine for the price point, and it's shaped appropriately. One side of it, though, you could see like a pretty decent, So what little issue? It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's a little tiny nitpick.
Right. Yeah.
That said, though, very happy with it overall.
Yeah. And so we kind of addressed the handling a little bit already. I was really impressed with this sword because when Vic sent me the specs, I was like, that's a freaking crowbar. That thing weighs a ton. Like, I can't even imagine what swinging that around is going to feel like. And then, I mean, when you compare this to, say, like the Ansbach, which is a review that we're going to have coming out pretty soon, they're extremely different experiences. But I don't know that either one is a better experience than the other because they both feel like they do what they're designed to do. Mm-hmm. This sword, when you thrust with it, I mean, you feel like you have the entire weight of the world behind the tip of that blade. So it absolutely handles great for that. And I was extremely impressed with how well it cuts for not being a cutting sword. I mean, it's got a steep taper from the central ridge. It is not a cutting sword by any means, but it cuts pretty well. So we both sort of thought it wasn't going to be that much fun as a backyard cutter because it is, again, we don't know anybody that wears plate armor that we don't like. So, but other than that, I was really impressed with how much fun it is.
Yeah, I completely second that. And again, this isn't the sword that I would just put in somebody's hand who's never held a sword before, and I want them to feel what a real sword, quote unquote, should feel like.
Fair point.
This isn't the one I would give them. But this is the one that if you want to know what a Type 15A is capable of, because like you said, you could put that, it feels like you could put that tip anywhere.
Yep.
It's so good at thrusting.
Like such good tip control.
And while like this is not the sword type that's going to do any of the work for you in terms of cutting, when you do get your edge alignment right, like you said, you were pulling off one-handed cuts.
Yeah.
I was pulling off some pretty smooth two-handed cuts. The thing that I think you'll notice is redirecting is a little bit of a chore.
Again, that's like that gyroscopic lightsaber force. It's like, you gotta bring it back around.
But even the first time I got this back from being sharpened, the very first cut I pulled off a clean cut and the base of the water bottle didn't move, which I was not expecting.
That's impressive.
At all. Yeah. Again, because like we know not what we were doing. So it's a lot funner than I thought it would be. The fact that it's a 1-for-1 replica just tickled me on the inside. I love that about it. And just to look at like the Type 10 guard, I believe, 10 or 8, can't remember. I'll put it up. That's my favorite type of guard on a longsword. That looks absolutely amazing to me. So yeah, handling much better at cutting than I thought it would be, and a lot more fun than I thought it would be.
Absolutely. So in terms of overall value, I think the question this sword posed, which made it interesting, I think both to Vic and myself, was is it possible to have a upper mid-range, to lower high-end sword that is a 1-for-1 replica of a museum piece with good fit and finish that I would want to own, and especially made by Windlass? And I would say the answer to all of those questions is yes. I think that for the price point that this sword is at, it's at about $675. I think it really, really checks all those boxes. The fit and finish is more than good enough to justify the price point. It's a very good 1-for-1 replica of the sword, and it performs really well. I can't recommend this sword enough. I don't know that I'll buy this one because I have access to it, but I will definitely be buying something from this line. I don't know which one yet, but I'm going to get something from this line because if this speaks for it, I'm very impressed. What do you think, Vic?
So second, pretty much everything you said there. Scott also had a lot of fun with it. He found the grip super comfortable, and because he's a big, strong Viking, he was wielding it one-handed like it didn't even matter.
Exactly.
So
it's like the mountain, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He carries a two-handed greatsword and he wields it with one hand.
Basically, yeah. So he enjoyed it, and so all the things John said, I second. I'll just add to the fact that if it was just the sword for this price point, I'd be happy. But you also get a scabbard. You get a pretty decently made wood core scabbard in leather that has, a brass shape here at the end, has rain guards. Like you said, the leather's not like this best quality.
Yeah.
But again, it's much better than what like the standard windlass leather sheath that you get on a lot of their swords. So
absolutely.
As like a bonus, I'm very happy with that as well.
And it is, like you said, it is wood core, so that's great. You can store it in there if you wanted to. It's a nice feature. Particularly, you want to throw it in your car. You don't want to cut your seats up.
Right.
Yeah, it's good for that.
So yeah, I definitely recommend this. I think this is a great value for the money. It's totally a buy, and it makes me. I was gonna get one of this line and then see how
exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna get 2 more.
Canary in the coal mine over here.
Yeah.
That was exactly what we needed.
I'm gonna get that Wakefield hanger, and I think I'm gonna get that English two-hander probably in the next couple months because I want a big sword again.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, completely recommend. Closing thoughts?
No, I definitely would recommend this. If this is the kind of sword you want, this is a good one to get for sure. And in general, I would definitely recommend checking out the whole line because it's pretty neat.
Yep, I second that. So hey guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Unsheathed Sword Reviews. What do we got coming up next, actually?
Well, we have a few interesting things coming up. We have a review of the Ansbach from Angus Trim and
Valiant Armoury,
right? So we've got that coming up. And we've also got the Danax from Arms and Armor. And so we'll have some stuff to talk about with that, and we'll maybe do some comparing, contrasting between that and another axe that we reviewed pretty recently, the Dark Sword Fantasy-esque Danax. So we got that coming up, and we have our contest announcement coming up.
Wow, we got a lot of stuff coming, don't we, John?
Yeah, we do.
It's like we're coming out swinging.
So it is the Dragon King Meow Dao.
Meow Dao.
That's how you say it exactly. So pay attention, meow. But so yeah, we've mentioned this previously in another video, but we're going to be giving that away to a lucky subscriber to our channel. So the idea being, we're going to post that video, you'll comment on it, and you have enter for a chance to win that sword. So yeah,
lots of cool stuff coming out really soon. So stay tuned, guys, and hey, thanks for joining us.
Peace.